you know, you just heard about Bernie.
Yes.
Sending him
It's all
your best.
Wish him and hope for the best.
Yeah.
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 And if you have chest pains, please go to the doctor.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
particularly men, because although heart disease is more pervasive in women, it's more fatal to men because men wait too long.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I just am so grateful that Senator Sanders had a chest pain yesterday and immediately went to the doctor, which is what we hope any man in our lives would do.
Yeah.
So, thank you for being a good example, and
Yeah.
I hope he gets well
So
very
true.
soon.
And now you rapping me. Okay. That was quick.
It was a
Good to have you. Apparently we've got a lot to get into with everybody, so we'll be right back.
Call United Health. Jones, baby.
A lot of commercials.
You cannot.
A lot of commercials.
Hey, we're back with the authors of the new book, Gutsy Women, Hillary and Chelsea Clinton. This is the book. Okay? Okay. It's a good one. So, yes. So let's dive in. Nancy Pelosi has called for an impeachment inquiry. You support it. What's the biggest reason you think now's the time to do it, and that it's the right thing to do now?
I think it became absolutely unavoidable when the summary of the phone call came out, plus the whistleblower complaint. And the reason for that is, you know, people can argue back and forth about what he might have done or what we think he did on a range of other issues. But this was in the pursuit of his official duties as President of the United States. And that phone call very clearly indicates an effort to not only pressure, but in effect extort the president of Ukraine over much necessary medical, military assistance that had already been passed by the Congress and was
Bipartisan, yes.
and bipartisan. It was about to be delivered, and the Defense Department was in favor of it, State was in favor, everybody was in favor of it. And then the day after Mueller testified, the president does what he did, holds up that aid, calls the president of Ukraine, and in effect said, yeah, we want to help you, though we have a favor to ask. And I think that pierced through the American consciousness about everything that's been going on for the last, 2+ years. And it would have been a dereliction of duty at that point for the Congress, led by Speaker Pelosi, to say, okay, another really bad thing, we're just going to have to keep moving. They had to look into this. And there's enough concern by former security officials, others who have weighed in on this, that it deserves an impeachment inquiry.
Very good. Chelsea, you set Twitter on fire last week after President Trump called the impeachment probe and whistleblower complaint the greatest scam in the history of American politics. And you tweeted this, yes, comma, you are. Which I love. That response, I checked this morning. I did. Yeah. I checked this morning. By this morning, it had over 260,000 likes. It had over 38,000 retweets. Now, we know Trump can be really relentless with his Twitter attacks. Were you at all concerned about sort of poking that bear?
No. And I do believe that he's the greatest scam in American political history.
Really?
Yes.
So,
I mean, I think his whole life has been a scam, and I think, unfortunately, people are suffering every day because his scam has thus far kind of succeeded at the highest levels. So
you've become really vocal, not only on Twitter, but just everywhere. Did you make a conscious decision?
It's genetic.
It is genetic. Well, it is genetic, but I've seen a change.
You know, I'm so proud of my mom. I'm very biased toward her.
Yeah.
And love her very much and feel very protective of her. Although I know she doesn't need me to be. But really, my most important role now is as my kid's mom. You know, I have a daughter, Charlotte, who just turned 5 last week. A son, Aiden, oh thanks, who's 3, and baby Jasper, who's just 2 months old. And yeah, he's very mushy. And I think about the country that they're living in right now, and it's not the country I want them to grow up in. You know, we learned last night that President Trump wanted to dig a ditch at the border and put alligators in the ditch.
And snakes.
And snakes and shoot
in the leg. Shoot migrants in the
shoot
leg.
migrants in the leg. And you know, I know that we've long
Allegedly, those are the allegations.
we've long had this, I think, tagline from Adam Sewer at the Atlantic, that cruelty is the point. I think that article came out a year ago this week. But the depths of the cruelty and the inhumanity towards migrants, towards people of color, towards our LGBTQ community.
War
is just-
heroes.
War heroes, yes ma'am. Women, yes ma'am. You know, just is not the America that I want my kids or Abby's kids or and any of our kids and grandkids to grow up in. And I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that is not the America that they grow up in.
So, just to go on that, let's talk about his mental state, okay? Because this guy is still obsessed with your emails. He talks about it constantly.
He's obsessed with her.
And with you, yeah, he's obsessed with her, with you. And also, they're chanting, lock her up. I mean, he has every criminal working for him, and they're worried about locking you up, okay? What do you make of that?
Well, I think 3 things. First, I do think that he knows that he's an illegitimate president. And because of that, he's very insecure about it. Look what he's trying to do now. I mean, part of the Ukraine scandal that is slowly coming to light is he's trying to figure out how to say, no, it wasn't the Russians, even though our intelligence community and everyone who's looked at this said, yeah, it was the Russians. He's trying to say, no, somehow it was, Obama, Hillary, whoever. So he's obsessed with the fact that he was helped a lot in unprecedented
His ego
ways.
can't handle it.
Yeah, he can't handle it. But the second thing is he accuses other people of doing what he does.
Yes, projection.
And I didn't understand that projection. I didn't understand that originally, and it was so odd. I mean, he accused people of all these things. And that's like a central part of his personality.
Yes.
And then thirdly, I just think that he is someone who has to dominate and be, the only voice in the room and the biggest guy on the block, the master of the universe. And he can't stand any kind of questioning or any kind of dialogue. I mean, I had the great pleasure of both working with Abby's dad and Megan's dad. And true American patriots, leaders of the highest order. And we didn't always agree, but boy, you could have a terrific conversation about what the options were and how best to proceed. And you'd walk away friends, you'd walk away as colleagues. And now all of a sudden we have a president who gets rid of people who disagree with him, who tries to silence people, who is sending our Attorney General, apparently willingly, on this round-the-world trip to make up stuff, to try to prove that his election wasn't influenced by the Russians. So I just think that it's a whole constellation of problems, Joy.
And he's helped and aided and abetted by these Republican leaders who don't call him to account on any of it.
Well, in the book, we highlight Margaret Chase Smith, a Republican woman, senator from Maine in the 1950s, who was the first and for a long time only Republican senator to stand against Joe McCarthy. It was a lonely position for her. She went to the floor of the Senate. I mean, I just get goosebumps because having been in the Senate, you go to try to make an important statement. She went to the floor of the Senate. She was actually on the little subway car that takes you from the office buildings to the Capitol, and Joe McCarthy got into the car, and he looked at her and said, "Oh, Margaret, you're going to go make a speech today?" And she goes, "Yeah, Joe, and you're not going to like it." And she made that speech, calling him out, and really calling her party to take action against him, which eventually they did. And so you need people like that now.
Yeah.
You know, you need
Do we have
people.
a, is there anybody?
Well, I hope so. I hope that, I hope like when, John McCain gave that thumbs up because it was the right thing to do, even though his party in the Senate wasn't in favor of it, and obviously the White House wasn't. I hope we'll see some Republican voices. We've seen a few murmurings out of the House, people saying, this is troubling. This is something we need to worry about.
Either that or they resign. Right?
Or they resign.
I see more people that are just saying, I'm done with politics because I don't have a choice. You either have to stand with Trump or you're
Well,
done.
Chuck
And they leave.
Grassley clearly decided he couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
He came out and said, what the hell?
Well, he said the whistleblower
Yeah.
is legit.
Yeah.
Protect
And you
us.
know what?
Yeah.
Right.
Don't panic. We're going, but we're coming right back.
Yeah.
With that.
More.
Hospital may already
We're back with the authors of the new book, Gutsy Women, Hillary and Chelsea Clinton. Abby?
Yeah, let's get into 2020 because that's where the action is right now. Every day it changes. You're watching it from the sidelines.
Right.
though. How is that emotionally for you? How do you do that?
Well, look, I am obviously watching it because I care deeply that Trump is a one-term president or less. It's hard to believe, but it's still early. A lot of the people who were ahead at this point in prior nominating seasons did not end up winning the nomination. So it's hard to tell right now. I just wish everybody well. I've talked to most of them, and a lot of them call me from time to time and ask for advice. And I just try to give them the very best advice I can because it's really important to have a group of strong messengers about the alternative. But I think it's a really good point, Abby, because you got the election going on, you've got the impeachment going on. The Democrats have to do two things at once. They have to do the impeachment in a thoughtful, deliberative, serious way.
Yes.
And they have to do a campaign that talks about why it would be better for Americans when it comes to health care or climate change or whatever the issue might be. So that's a difficult balancing act, but it has to be done. And I know everybody's trying the best they know to actually get that done.
Well, you're sitting at a table in good company. Megan, myself, we've all lost presidential campaigns. My family didn't get nearly as far as yours did, but we all sat there the next day thinking, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Oh,
Right? And I know that you've probably had many mornings where you wake up, and this book is all about being gutsy as women. And part of being gutsy is looking back and realizing what I could have done differently.
Right.
When you look back on your campaign and what Democrats today might do differently, what goes through your mind? What do you wish you had done differently in that moment?
I wrote a whole book about it because it was devastating. It was devastating, as it was, I know, for the McCain family and your
There was
family.
more vodka involved in our election.
Well, there was vodka involved every time I traveled with your dad, I'll tell you that. But you know, what happens on the road stays on
He
the
used
road.
to say that you were a blast, and he loved traveling with you. And he
My
loved
dad said the same
drinking
thing
with
about you, actually. He
So,
said he loved
wow.
you.
I want to hear these.
I get all the good stuff.
But I think that goes partly to Abby's question. I'm a serious person, but I'm also a fun person. But I think I probably came across as too serious and too. I really believed that my job, especially as a woman and the first woman to go as far as I did, that I had to help people feel good about a woman in the Oval Office, a woman commander-in-chief. And so I may have overcorrected a little bit because sometimes people say, oh, why can't you be like that? Or why weren't you like that? And I did feel a heavy sense of responsibility. And it was such that, maybe I wasn't as loose or open as I could have been. So I take responsibility for everything I didn't do as well, or my campaign didn't do as well.
Well, you take responsibility for Russia.
No, but that's the issue. I really believe that there were unprecedented events in this election, the last election, I mean, that were beyond my understanding and nearly anybody else's. When we started talking in the summer of 2016 about the Russians, you know, I think most of the press and the public goes, what is she talking about?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can't go around making excuses. They didn't understand the attack that we were unfortunately suffering. So I think now, and here's what I've told all the candidates. I said, look, you could run the best campaign. You could be the nominee, but you could still lose because, number one, you could lose with voter suppression. And you had Stacey Abrams on,
Yes.
and you know she is a champion for let everybody vote. And at the end of the day, who wins wins, and who doesn't. Or you could lose because of hacking and theft of material.
Can I ask you just really quick
Yeah.
on this because
Yeah.
I got into it with Pamela Anderson. I don't know if you saw about Julian Assange because I can't
Thank
understand
you.
any.
Thank you.
No, I cannot understand anyone defending WikiLeaks or Julian Assange at this point. But I will say Elizabeth Warren is also a front runner, and there's a leaked audio that came out, and Mark Zuckerberg is heard saying, quote, she would end up in court if she moved to break up Facebook, making it clear he doesn't want her to be president. We all know that Facebook had a defining factor in the last election. Are you concerned that WikiLeaks and Facebook could end up influencing voters and tipping the scales again?
Well, I'm afraid that could happen again, Megan. And I'm afraid because, look, WikiLeaks, and I didn't see it, but I read about what you said, and I'm with you on that because WikiLeaks became an instrument of Russian intelligence. It was not an independent, whistle-blowing, transparency promoting organization.
He was a Russian agent.
I believe essentially that's a fair statement. So WikiLeaks was operating as an arm of the Russian intelligence services. Facebook was careless.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, though, they knew when people are buying ads and they're paying you in rubles, that should send a little bit of a alarm off, right? So I worry what the intelligence experts.
Shirt that says that.
Yeah.
People are buying ads and they're paying you in rubles. ...
But you know, but even the intelligence people in the Trump administration are saying the Russians are back in our system, and that means they're back online, and they may be in the election apparatus. So Facebook has an especially big responsibility because most people get their news from Facebook.
I want to tell Republicans, if they'll do it to you, they'll do it to us. So that's the part I don't understand about WikiLeaks and the defense of Julian Assange is that it's cyber terrorism should be condemned all the way around.
Thank you.
Thank you for agreeing with me.
Thank you.
I don't understand it.
We will be right back with more understanding with Hillary and Chelsea Clinton.
Let a cold ruin your day? You take Dayquil Severe Liquid Caps and crush it. Dayquil Severe, the daytime...
I didn't realize the seriousness about what Donald Trump had done until Hillary just got through bringing it out as far as dereliction of duty. With the Ukrainians being our allies, we are bounded under an oath of helping them and not abandoning them and abandoning our responsibilities for them and towards them. It's similar towards what went on here pertaining to a judge in Weakley County by the name of Tommy Moore that abandoned his responsibilities, especially after you have went in front of him as many times as David and I went in front of him with legal paid counsel and still could not get nothing done in this area pertaining to quieting down and stopping the atrocities that was happening to our family pertaining to not just bullying, but actually people that was terrorizing our lives down here. Terrorizing our lives. And to think that the only thing that the judicial system here in Weakley County could do was turn it around and attack the person that was being violated which turned it into now a multiple violation against the person that was being violated, is just absolutely appalling to me that the courts still to this day has yet to bring any type of formal or informal apology in regard to what has occurred here pertaining to Mr. Tommy Moore, the judge here. It's absolutely asinizing. It's appalling to think that these people have continued to violate good, sound law enforcement principles, and to this day have still not give in an account towards what that they have done. Beginning basically with what the Martin PD done in 2005 towards trying to make me out to be some sort of a homegrown terrorist as far as falsifying files. To think that they pulled the wool over my eyes, or they think that they pulled the wool over my eyes, similar towards what went on in Land Between the Lakes pertaining to a Gary Hawkins and a Lisa Hawkins and a Dwayne Camry. To think that they have pulled the wool over our eyes just speaks volumes about the intelligence of these type of people that continued to tromp and romp over my rights and our rights again and again and again, especially whenever it comes down to a judge that should be charged with dereliction of duty because he did not handle the situation with my brother and Mr. Ridgeway and Miss Ridgeway and Kelly Sheffield at the time, that took my brother down on his own property in 2010, taking him not only down on his own property, but getting a gun from him and trying to use it on him as far as attempted murder. In addition to what the PD done to me up in Martin, Tennessee, simply because I was standing in front of a merchant and I told a young merchant that there was going to be a great deal of controversy in my life that was probably going to cause me to be on the 6 o'clock news. Just because I mentioned that, they take it upon to themselves in Martin, Tennessee to drive all the way to Huntington, Tennessee during the time that I was working for a body shop by the name of First Choice that was owned by Jimmy Darnell and David Lloyd, apprehend me without any type of assistance from Carroll County, drive me all the way back to Martin, Tennessee, me basically sworn an affidavit that I did not have no harmful intentions in front of about 7 or 8 police officers, but they still pursued the charge of falsifying files, which basically means an individual that pulls a fire alarm in a theater that cries out, "Fire! Fire! Fire!" That starts a panic and several people get harmed or hurt because of you falsely putting out a report that there was a fire. First of all, I wasn't in a theater. Second of all, I didn't pull a fire alarm. Third of all, I was only speaking to one particular individual in a little general or a convenience store. I don't forgot the name of the convenience store right now there in Martin, Tennessee, in which, by and large, my prophecy did in fact come true. I did wind up on the 6 o'clock news out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, a couple years after that. It's remarkable how that these law enforcement agencies demand, do as I say, but not as I do. In other words, they want the general public to be held to the fullest extent of the law as far as accountability, but whenever they mess up, they make a mistake, watch them hide. Watch them run off the ship like a bunch of rats. watch them go in multiple directions other than going in the right one. And to think that I had to go out to Oklahoma and Texas because I knew that those occurrences was off balance. I knew that those occurrences was not the truth of how the media as well as law enforcement agencies had claimed that those incidences was the truth. To think that I had to go all the way out there to discover the truth of the cover-up and then get punished again because once more the general population didn't like the message coming from the messenger. To think that these people here in Weakley County have reluctantly neglected their responsibilities and their duties, not just as law enforcement people pertaining to captains, judges, lawyers, etc., 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 but to think that the general public never did get in behind the founder of the Windmill Ministries after him spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and God only knows the miles, and God only knows the people that he's left literature at the front of their doors pertaining to churches, and still to this day have yet to get any type of true supporting. It speaks volumes about the type of people that has neglected their responsibilities to our veterans in taking care of those who have taken care of us. It speaks volumes about how worthless and sorry that these human beings that call themselves a Christian society in actuality has turned out to be. Similar towards Donald Trump, that we had done already made crucial partnerships with the Ukrainians, and to think that a president of the American free world was now going to hold them hostage by trying to blackmail them and tell them, okay, we'll give you this if you give us that. That's not how we're supposed to work, folks. We don't abuse the power of the purse. And Donald Trump can say whatever that he wants to say in whatever way that he wants to say it. But to think that he can make bold statements such as, well, we're going to put this person that was a whistleblower on the hot seat. And we may actually put a contract out on his head. To think that somebody would say that about a certain person that was doing their job ethically, professionally, and morally, once more speaks volumes about where we are as a nation. Let's listen to the rest of this. Hopefully my YouTube channel will allow for me to put it on my YouTube channel. And the only reason why that I am concerned about this is because it's pertaining to the prior First Lady, that was First Lady for 8 years, and her daughter right there. I think her name is Chelsea or something like that. But that's the only reason why that I wanted to focus in on what was being said today amongst one of the prior leaders of the diplomatic party, in which, once more, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a politician. I'm a minister of God to bring forth a certain message to the people pertaining to the salvation plan from God through his son Jesus Christ, and also about end-time biblical Bible prophecy. But at the same time, I still have a right to view things. I still have a right to my opinion about things. I still have a right as a free moral individual of voicing my opinions to my viewers and letting them make their decision towards what has occurred here, not only in the 2016 presidential race, but also what has occurred here pertaining to the founder of the Windmill Ministries missions. Thanks again, and let's end this up with what they're fixing to say here. God bless.
About in the book were kind of brought into my life thanks to my mom and my grandmothers, but also thanks to really extraordinary teachers who thought that history and science and social studies shouldn't just be the province of straight white men. So thank you to my teachers, and thank you for being a teacher and talking about Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson was a government employee who just kind of looking at the data believed that not only DDT but pesticides more broadly were doing so much more than just killing insects. She believed that they were seeping into groundwater, that they were hurting other animal species, and ultimately were harmful to human health. And she had to fight for years for her kind of government colleagues to pay attention to her. And she finally believed that this was so important. It couldn't just be a report, it had to be told to the public. And she wrote this seminal book, more than 50 years ago, Silent Spring. And that was so catalytic to the environmental movement here in the United States, and I think is still really kind of the gold standard of public advocacy.
We're still fighting these forces of evil who want to pollute everything.
They need to listen to women more.
Yeah.
In general.
Secretary, you also write about Eleanor Roosevelt in the book and her decision to stay in her marriage after she discovered her husband's affair. And then yesterday on ABC, you said that staying in your marriage was personally the gutsiest thing you've done. Now, I've been married 21 years, and it isn't easy to stay in a marriage, but why was that, out of all the things you've done, the gutsiest thing you've done personally?
Well, look, I think everybody knows it was an incredibly painful time and experience for us, and I've lived long enough that I've had lots of friends go through similar experiences, but not on the world stage. So you'd be in a kitchen holding each other's hands, or on the telephone listening to your friend cry and trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. And there's no one answer. No. For some people that I've known, the right thing was take your kid and go, clean out your bank accounts, don't look back. For other people, get into a negotiation and figure out whether you want to stay, or in my case, after really hard thinking about it, counseling, praying, all the things that I did and that we went through, I just decided it was the right decision for me. But that didn't mean it was an easy decision. It was a really hard decision, and I think at personal points along the way, sometimes deciding whether to get married or who to marry is a gutsy decision. If you marry somebody outside your faith or of a different race or different ethnicity, that's a gutsy decision. I've had friends whose parents wouldn't go to the wedding and haven't talked to them in years, right? Sometimes when your child has an issue, I had a friend a few years ago who called up and said, I don't know who to talk to about this, but my little girl wants to be a boy. What do I do? And several of us we didn't know what to do. We'd never had a friend who'd faced that before. And several of us kind of read everything, talked to people, and gave her advice. And it was really gutsy for her to say, okay, I'm going to respect the feelings of my child, as hard as it is for me to understand this. So I think when the question was asked personally, everybody faces a moment of decision. And you have to reach deep down inside and decide what's right for you to do. And hopefully it's reached with love and understanding, but it's gutsy.
Well, people also think it's also gutsy to run for president. My sister's convinced that you're getting back in the race in like 6 months, that there's going to be a window.
8 months.
Is the door closed? She really is convinced every day.
Secretary? I would come here if I did.
All right. That's not a no.
Oh, I've said repeatedly no. But it is gutsy to run for president as a man or a woman, I'll tell you that much.
And you know what it's also gutsy to do? It's also gutsy to allow people to have their opinions about your personal life, because everyone from the beginning of all of that had something to say.
Right.
And you were gracious with every one of them. And that
Right.
I thought was gutsy.
It's more
because-
nervy than gutsy.
Well, no, I think it's, when you're running for president and people are judging you on old baggage that they know nothing about.
Yeah, no.
Yep.
Right.
I just think that's gutsy, and so thank you. And thank you to Hillary and
And it's not so much just running for president, it's the fact that you have stepped out into the eyes of the general public. It doesn't matter if you're a commissioner, it doesn't matter if you're a senator, it doesn't matter if you're a county mayor or city mayor. It doesn't matter, because once you step out into the eyes of the general public, then the general public has a right to manipulate and decipher the things that they think about you, the things that they feel about you. Even though they may not have given forth not one iota, financially speaking, or even morally speaking, towards supporting you in your efforts, they're still going to make themselves known in expressing their feelings about you. And anyone, it doesn't matter if it's a preacher, teacher, minister, that is out into the eyes of the general public, because the general public is some of the hardest people in the world, one of the hardest occupations in the world to deal with. Whenever I worked for 35 years in the car industry, I have yet to work, or had yet to work on an automobile that as soon as I hit the fender towards trying to knock a dent out, or as soon as I had to cut a panel off of that car, all of a sudden I heard the car complaining and raising Cain and kicking and stomping and showing aggressionness towards me. Cars don't talk back. There are certain occupations that you don't have to worry about that type of treatment. Whenever you're milking a cow ain't going to talk to you verbally and say, hey, you pulled on one of my udders the wrong way. But what that cow will do is show his displeasement a lot of times by kicking you and trying to get your attention, regardless whether he's kicking you in the hand or kicking you in the head. It's the same way with people. People will let you know how they feel. People will express their feelings either in a negative or a positive way. And that is the consequences once you step out into that arena, once you step out into that market. You're now moving into a market that can verbally express their feelings either for you or against you. And if you don't have tough skin in being able to step out into that market, then I would strongly advise for you not to step out into that market. And today we see where the margin of error has narrowed to the point that now you can create your own audience through Facebook or YouTube or other social media platforms, to the point that, once more, if you cannot handle that type of resistance or that type of criticism, maybe it's not for you to get on Facebook or to get on a social media platform to where you have to be exposed to that type of negativity coming from your audience.
Chelsea Clinton, members of the audience, you know what I'm getting ready to tell you. You get everybody get a copy of the book, okay? That's your winner. We'll be right back.
Temperatures back into the low to mid 90s here for the second day of October. Our record here at the station dating back to 1953, 98 degrees. At Paducah, though, back to about 93 degrees for the record. Also in 1953 at Cape Corona's record today, 92 back to 1971. A big fall-like cold front is on the way for Thursday. We'll be tracking it here coming up later on tonight on News 3.
like I'm having technical difficulty. Now, here we go.
So I'll get on board with whoever we need to get on board with, to be honest.
No favorites?
Any other living organism would be fine with me. I do.
I have a favorite.
Okay, it looks like they have dismissed Hillary and her daughter, so because of it, I'm going to move on with my program in other areas. Once more, we want to thank you for listening and being a part of the Windmill Ministries missions message that we're putting out today in regard to people's feelings and people's opinions and people in general that are out into the eyes of the general public, that has to deal with scrutiny and all types of criticism coming from the general public. God bless you, and good luck to all of us. And once more, thank you for listening, and shalom. See ya.
You to understand this.
Hillary Clinton. Daytime exclusive from ABC, The View. The worst thing that I hold against her is what happened with the military pertaining to Benghazi. As far as her sticking her marriage together, sticking with Bill Clinton, that was a noble thing to do for anybody, regardless whether they was a public official or just an individual in general, of trying to keep her marriage together, her family together.